So it wasn't that long ago that I began my endeavor to read Deleuze, Gilles Deleuze, the French philosopher, post-structuralist philosopher, or postmodern philosopher. I kind of groan when I say that word just because, I don't know, when I was first getting into philosophy towards the end of high school and beginning of college, postmodern was sort of this icon, this high, great idea about the time within which we all live. Supposedly, this was the sort of myth of academic philosophy in America, in American universities, that I was led into. I'm searching for the meaning of the postmodern. What does it mean that the modern has ended? Or what is the end of the modern, you could say. But I don't know if postmodern or post-structuralist is the best description of Deleuze. You have to read him for yourself, and I think after reading him, after encountering his philosophy, and even his autobiography, because, after Nietzsche, philosophy has been unveiled as autobiography, which is not a diminishment of philosophy. It just sets philosophy a new task. Whereas in the past it was supposed to pretend to the universal, or to the eternal, pretend to possession of spirit, without having to consider or relate to or be mediated by the personal or the individual or the autobiographical. Philosophy was the pursuit of wisdom, which was beyond personality. Now, of course, there are some exceptions. There's Christian philosophy, which is really philosophy in pursuit of precisely the personal, but a kind of trans-individual person, a divine person, rather than a simply mortal person. But on the other hand, Christian philosophy is also an attempt to think the mortal and the divine as one, or to think God incarnate, the Word become flesh, the eternal Word, the being of the Word become flesh. And Deleuze will write a lot about Christian philosophy, especially as it comes through thinkers like Nicholas of Cusa and Giordano Bruno, who, Bruno's admittedly, as Cusa's, these were strange Christianities. These were not the Christianities of, Catholic philosophy. This was a wilder, feral Christianity, a sort of paradoxical rather than orthodoxical theology. So Deleuze looks to Cusa, to Bruno, to Kierkegaard, and even in a way to Nietzsche, who in some ways is a crypto-Christian, one whose Christianity, whose attempt to become more than man, to become Superman, to become that which is beyond good and evil and beyond human mortality and morality. Morality being really our response to our mortality and the mortality of others, others and ourselves. So Deleuze is looking to Cusa, to Bruno, to Leibniz, these Christian philosophers, Kierkegaard especially, in Difference and Repetition, where repetition is, as Deleuze talks about it, the sort of dramatization of philosophy. which initially was the same form that Plato used at the beginning of ancient philosophy. So, ancient and modern philosophies, Plato and Kierkegaard, and even Plato and Nietzsche, they all discovered or explicated or expressed philosophy in dramatic form, as dialogue, or using pseudonyms like Nietzsche and Kierkegaard with Zarathustra or Dionysus, or for Kierkegaard, Johannes Climacus, and offering philosophy as something that's been personalized, not necessarily with their own authentic person, whatever that should mean, but a person beyond themselves as an empirical, particular, individual human. Kierkegaard and Nietzsche were trying to overcome their own individuality, as is Deleuze. In a sense, that's the task of the artist. The task of the artist is to communicate, and to communicate is to go beyond oneself, to move outside oneself in order to share oneself with the other. So the artist, unlike the philosopher, is trying to create perceptions and to transmute sensations, such that the perceptual or the sensory world becomes problematic to us in an as yet unforeseen way. So art is a form of experimentation on experience that transforms what had been naturally or innately given into what has now been tampered with, instrumentalized, and transformed or reproduced in some as yet unforeseen way. So Deleuze says about the artist, or about art, that it does not merely mimic or imitate nature or reality. Art instead art repeats. Art engages in a techne or a craft of repetition, and tries to become conscious of repetition, of the process of what Deleuze calls passive synthesis, of the process in which the pure past, the past which has never been present, becomes present, the way it becomes contracted or condensed into the duration of the passing moment. And this is memory, of course. And so the artist is trying to become conscious not only of what is remembered, of the products of memory, but of the process of memory itself. And Deleuze we'll call this imagination also, this passive synthesis of the pure past, or past that never is, into the present, that always is becoming, and so never really is. And this is where you get into higher orders of this synthesis of time, and what the artist is trying to do, and the philosopher, and in his or her own way, is trying to do, is to draw up this from this unconscious process of temporal synthesis, draw up sort of perceptions and concepts, the artist percepts and the philosopher concepts, that then become conscious. So what normally happens unconsciously to us, the formation of our habitual modes of perception, for the artist becomes conscious. We become to intentionally engage it, with craft and skill, and in that way to call forth from it something which had not yet been there. So of course, philosophy and art and science in its own way. These are all creative endeavors. Not simply it's not simply that philosophy discovers pre-made concepts floating in the sky, just awaiting actualization by a thinker, by a philosopher. Nor is the artist just shedding light on things which were already there, percepts of things which were already there in the world. The artist discovers light as itself the source or the ground of things, so that one does not simply shine light on an already existing thing. When one turns the light, when one shines the light according to a different color or a different shade, one's actually creating new things, not simply discovering things which were already there. Things are a mode of shining, in other words, or light is constitutive of things, and you don't get things there waiting in the perceptual world for the eye to gaze upon. It's the way that the eye gazes, as much as the thing gazed upon, that gives rise to our perceptual experience. So the artist is tampering in this realm of the sensory, right, which is neither simply that which senses or the thing sensed. The sense world, or the sense world separates it from self. Sense includes the perceiver and the perceived, right? And the artist will vibrate the connections between the two, transforming both at once. So, Deleuze is an interesting cat, as some of you probably know, and I might have more and more to say about him in coming videos. He's a controversial figure, I think, because you can try to imitate him. It's one way of responding to Deleuze, but of course Deleuze would have wanted us to become ourselves the artist, ourselves the philosopher, and in that way not simply imitate what he was doing, but creatively repeat it, to differentially repeat what he has done.